you ever prayed but never got an answer, and wondered if God was really there? Did you feel all hope was gone, but in His time He came along and answered the prayer you thought was gone? There is no prayer too small, for God hears them all. The answer may not be just what you want, but He always knows what's right, even when we think it's wrong. Just remember, there is no prayer too small. I have read if you will ask, you shall receive. No matter what it is, I still believe. There is no prayer too small, and even when we fall, He gives us just exactly what we need. There is no prayer too small, for God hears them all. The answer may not be just what you want, but He always knows what's right, even when we think it's wrong. Just remember, there is no prayer too small. No prayer too small. He always knows what's right. God hears them all. There is no prayer too small. My God hears them all. The answer may not be just what you want, but He always knows what's right, even when we think it's wrong. Just remember, there is no prayer too small. No prayer too small. No prayer too small. God hears them all.
Hello, my name is Ralf Friedrichs. I'm an addiction recovery coach and the host of the Take Your Life Back Today show. As an addiction recovery coach, I want to share something with you, and let me be crystal clear. Just imagine being buried alive. You're in a coffin, but you know you're not dead. You don't know how to get out of that coffin. You try lifting the lid, but the enormous weight upon the lid prevents you from opening the lid. You try to bang on the lid to unsettle the dirt. Maybe somebody will notice and dig their way down to helping you. This is what it's like to find yourself at the lowest point of alcohol and drug addiction. You know you need help. You know you can't do it on your own, but you don't know where to turn. In reality, there are probably people standing by your grave. You just don't know that. You just think you're going to die. Usually, though, people don't think about death when they're habitually abusing drugs and alcohol. In order to feed an addiction, you have to be great at repressing the fear of death. I often ask you, my audience, did it ever cross your mind while you're abusing drugs and alcohol that maybe, just maybe, you might overdose and take something away that God had given you, quote, life? With this, let me leave one last thought. Don't be like the person that I just spoke about that went to their grave without getting help. Instead, pick up the phone and call me at 844-405-HELP, and I promise you I will help you take your life back. For your life is gone. Usually I go into a couple other segments, but I want to get directly to disability awareness because it is a long segment. There are many ways in which you can help people with disabilities. However, please be aware that there are also ways you can hinder them rather than help them. Please watch this video and these tips before you try helping someone with a disability. Here are some general rules for helping all people with disabilities. Always treat people with disabilities as equals to us. All people want to have is friends, fun, experience life to the maximum. People with disabilities are no exception. Never be afraid, skeptical, or even embarrassed to approach someone with a disability. People with disabilities have just as much fun as you and I. Always ask before you help. People with disabilities have varying levels of independence. Never assume someone with a disability has a low level. If someone looks like they're struggling, ask before you help. A person may welcome help, or they may ask you to let her be independent or he independent. But even if they look like they're struggling, they may just want to become more independent, which requires practice each and every situation, each and every day. Never assume someone does or does not have a disability. Everyone is different. Sometimes people with disabilities may act, feel, or think differently than you. Don't assume that for this reason, someone has a disability. Simply treat them as individuals because people should be treated equally no matter what. Do not stare. Sometimes it's an eye-opening experience to see someone with a disability in the public. However, people with disabilities have lives just like you and me. You are certainly allowed to look, but do not stare at the person with the disability. Simply view them the way you would view anyone else. Respect and understand confidentiality. People with disabilities have a right to their own privacy. They are not obligated to tell you about their disability. If someone does tell you about their disability, do not assume that he or she is comfortable with telling other people about the disability. So do not spread it around. Always ask permission to discuss the disability with anyone else before you do. How to help a person who is visually impaired or blind. Never pet, play, feed, or talk to a guide dog when he or she is working. A guide dog is working when he or she is helping its owner. Guide dogs are trained to act, behave, and guide people with visual impairments in certain ways. If you're not sure if the guide dog is working, ask the guide dog's owner first before talking to the dog. Also note that people with visual impairments do not want to be noticed and receive attention simply because they have dogs. While many love dogs, these pets are trained to help their owners and should be treated accordingly. If a person who is visually impaired looks disorientated, you may approach him or her and ask if they would like some assistance. However, if they insist that they are okay, do not help them. Leave them alone. Independency is a crucial skill for people with disabilities. So, when they insist you do not help them, they really mean it. If a person does ask for help, do not assume you know how to help them. Ask how would they like to be helped before you touch him or her. You do not want to startle the person and lose the trust that you might have just built up. If a person grants your help, offer him your arm. Do not take it. People with visual impairments depend on their arms for balance. Also, they cannot see when someone is about to grab them. Therefore, you should always offer your arm as opposed to grabbing their arm. Always identify yourself when engaging with others with a person who is visually impaired. Remember that people with visual impairments cannot see physical cues that people without visual impairments can. It is important to be verbal when spending time with the person who is visually impaired. Not only should you do this in a social situation, but also in situations where you are simply helping someone. For example, if you are a policeman and you see a person with visual impairment struggling, it would be wise to introduce yourself. Tell the person your name and that you are a policeman. This will make the person feel much more comfortable in receiving your help. Be verbal. That is worth repeating. Be verbal. Always be verbal. Let a person with a visual impairment know that if there are any hazardous object situations approaching, if you are walking with her in a place which is unfamiliar, give her verbal cues about where it is that you are going, such as, are we going down the hall, or we're maybe going to cross the street. This helps prepare the person you are helping. How to help a person who's walking with crutches. Always ask the person if they need help before helping them. Sometimes people with physical disabilities appear to be struggling, when in actuality they are just acting in a way that works best for them. I know this from personal experience. Opening doors can be hard, but I have found a way to do it. Therefore, always ask before you help. Never touch a person's equipment, like crutches, wheelchair, white cane, or guide dog. It is in your best interest to avoid handling the equipment that belongs to someone with a disability. You may not know how to handle the object or how fragile it might be, so do not touch the aids. If, for example, a person's crutches are on the floor and you are unaware or unsure if she or he can bend down to pick it up, ask first. She will let you know if she needs assistance. Otherwise, show the person respect by respecting her equipment, because it is much a part of her arm and a leg as your arms and legs are. If you witness a person fall, ask before you help. Many times people fall. It is expected that you lend them a hand and help them get up. However, when people with disabilities fall, the consequences could be much worse than embarrassment, broken bones, and etc. Ask a person how you can help them and go from there. How to help a person in a wheelchair. Never lean, push, or sit on a person's wheelchair. Just as crutches, they are a part of the person's body. A wheelchair is also a part of a user's body and personal space. No matter how friendly you are with a person, respect their space by not handling their wheelchair. Never sit on the person's wheelchair, ever, without their permission. If a person can get out of his wheelchair and ask you to watch it while they're doing something, maybe like going to the bathroom, it is still not wise to sit in the wheelchair. You do not know its ins and outs like they do, and you do not want to break a piece of equipment that someone relies on each and every day. Feel free to get on their level. It makes you feel comfortable to kneel or sit in order to have eye level with the person in the wheelchair. Feel free to do it. If you work in an office and a person who uses a wheelchair needs your service, sometimes it is necessary to come into the waiting room instead of trying to peer over the desk. Be aware of situations like this. Again, people with disabilities want to be treated as equals in society, so it is perfectly reasonable to make accommodations in order to make them feel comfortable. Keep ramps and accessible walkways clear. It is very frustrating for wheelchair users to take alternate paths designated as wheelchair accessible, only to be denied access to the building or store due to blockage. Always think before you park your bike, car, or place objects on walkways without steps or ramps. How to help a person with social disabilities. Respect this person's personal space. Some people who have social disabilities are sensitive to touch. For this reason, it is imperative that you respect their personal space before engaging in any physical contact. Can I have a hug, you might want to ask, is a question we will ask sometimes. Don't be afraid to ask. In fact, it is better to ask first than just invading their personal space. If a person with social disabilities seems upset, feel free to give that person words of encouragement. Sometimes people with social disabilities can become easily overwhelmed. In this case, it is okay to talk to them in a calming voice to let them know that things are going to be okay. Sometimes all it takes is a few words of encouragement to help them feel happy again. How to help someone who is deaf or has a hearing loss. Speak clearly. People who are deaf or have a hearing loss can read lips. If you speak clearly and project your voice, do not yell. They may need no other help. Always make eye contact with that person, not his sign language interpreter, and you're not either. It is very important that you have a conversation with the person involved, not the sign language interpreter. By talking with the interpreter, you are excluding the person that really needs to talk to you. Always talk with him or her as you would with anyone else. The sign language interpreter will take care of the rest from there. Write it down. If communication is not working, you may write down your message to the person. However, it would be best to ask in written format what she prefers to have the entire conversation on paper, especially because there may be simpler options, or hear it. How to help someone with a speech disability. Never finish sentences for them. Once again, a person's independence is very important. If you are conversing with a person with a speech impairment, do not try to finish the sentences or interrupt the person. Be patient, allow the person to finish speaking before you begin talking. If you cannot understand that person, ask him or her to repeat it for verification. It is okay to ask the person with a speech disability to repeat themselves. It shows more effort on your part as opposed to just nodding and agreeing with everything. If you do...
Have you ever prayed but never got an answer, and wondered if God was really there? Did you feel all hope was gone, but in His time He came along and answered the prayer you thought was gone? There is no prayer too small, for God hears them all. The answer may not be just what you want, but He always knows what's right, even when we think it's wrong. Just remember, there is no prayer too small. Will ask, you shall receive. No matter what it is, I still believe. There is no prayer too small, and even when we fall, He gives us just exactly what we need. There is no prayer too small, God hears them all. The answer may not be just what you want, but He always knows what's right, even when we think it's wrong. Just remember, there is no just remember